client, and the CIO said, I get phone calls every day from outsourcing companies that are telling me that they can do everything that you guys can do at half the cost and of higher quality, and you need to help me understand why I don't say yes to that. And there were a lot of stunned faces in the room. Now, interestingly, at some point subsequently, he actually did say yes to that. So that comment apparently did not prove adequately motivating to the people who heard it. I'm sure it was motivating to some of them to polish up their resumes. So the Gartner group of analysts, they've looked at this situation. They've pronounced outsourcing as irreversible megatrend, and I think they tend to be right that the globalization of software industry is something that has happened and is not something which is going to be changed by much of anything. Government policies, taxation. I wouldn't expect any of those things to be silver bullets if you're on the other side of the fence saying, well, I wish that we weren't going to do this. Well, I think you have to figure out, given that it's going to happen, what you want to do. There are certainly some people that have banded together in various organizations or have just privately within their own companies become obstacles to outsourcing. I don't think that's a strategy for success for people. You could, of course, decide to do something else with your life, and we certainly saw a lot of that in 2002 when the industry went through its last big downturn. That people that were in the field just left, and I expect there's some of that might happen here during this downturn. We haven't heard as much about it yet, but maybe if the downturn persists as long as the one in 2002 does, that we'll see similar problems. So what this presentation is really about is to help you get on the train, basically. Assuming that you want to be successful in an outsourced situation, you want to try to penetrate the various mysteries, the layers of the onion that confront you, then the remainder of this presentation is about how to do that, how to go into the situation ready for success. So what are the various layers of the outsourcing onion that we're going to look at here? Well, organizing to succeed, making sure that you're properly organized. Life cycle implications, understanding how the software development life cycle that your organization uses interacts with the outsourcing situation. Test partners, figuring out how you're going to get the testing done of this outsourced work and whether you want to use the same company to develop and to test. Transcending the CMM, CMMI illusion, I think I could say, in the sense that the thought of, well, a company is CMMI level 5, therefore we don't have to worry about the quality and the testing. That's something that you need to get beyond because it's not that simple. Plan and execute logistics of outsourcing. There are a lot of logistical issues, things that can happen very easily, and two people working in the same building are harder when you have to coordinate across geographical and time zone barriers. There's risk. There are a number of risks that exist that are additional to the usual risks, and so I think it's fair to say outsourcing does create additional risks for the project, and you need to manage them. Some amount of face-to-face presence is something that's very helpful, and understanding cultures, adapting to the cultures, and maintaining focus. So we'll look at each one of these in detail. Now, one of the things I want to point out as we go through this presentation, I'm going to be blunt and direct and honest about things, as I think I have a reputation for being. Now, some of the things that I say might come across as being critical of outsourcing, outsourced development, outsourced testing, CMM/CMMI, those sort of things. It's not that I'm critical of them or that I don't believe in them. Of course, RBCS provides outsourced testing services through its Software TestWorks subsidiary, so it's not at all the case that I think this stuff can't work and that it's an unmitigated disaster. But I am of the mind that if it's not managed properly, it will become a unmitigated disaster. And so what I'm trying to do and trying to convey is the important things to manage, and please don't construe that as you know, woe is us, this stuff will never work, it's going to be a mess, a train wreck. Okay, so the first thing to think about is the need to organize. Chaos does not scale, and it will not scale up to an outsourced situation. I remember talking to a client once that was thinking about outsourcing their testing, and I advised them against it, in spite of the fact that we could very well have bid on that work. But I used the metaphor with him. I said, you know, the only part of your testing that's really your overall test process really working right now is your test execution process. Your testers have the ability to take test cases, run them, capture the results of those tests. Everything else is pretty seriously troubled. And all of those other things are required to get you adequately organized to deal with outsourced testing. I said, the way to think of your testing right now is like a big bucket of spaghetti. It's a mess and it's chaotic, but it's pretty well contained in the bucket, and it's not going to go anywhere. It's not going to get any worse, and it can be, the spaghetti can be straightened out strand by strand. I said, now imagine if you take that bucket and you throw that bucket 10,000 miles away over 2 oceans and 12 time zones. Now, when it lands, is it going to be more organized or less organized when all of that spaghetti goes flying out of there? Now, I'm not sure that that quite clicked with him, but I do think that that is a good way of thinking about it. If your testing and your development process is pretty much a mess, but it's all, you know, it sort of works because it's all contained within 4 walls and everybody sees each other, you know, this day-to-day crisis intervention and firefighting and stuff that keeps the wheels on the train. Understand that that will not scale. That will be a disaster if that happens. Now, this is a particular challenge if you're in an Agile world, because I think the Agile folks are still trying to figure out how to adapt to outsourced projects really well. There are some people who are doing some work on it, but there appear to be differing schools of thought about the outsourceability of Agile projects, and I don't want to speculate on that or go too far into that here. I talked about Agile challenges in the last webinar, but certainly I think if you're on a project, you're following an Agile methodology, you'd want to talk to people about how are we going to adapt these various Agile processes that we have to our outsourced scenario. So remember, Agile, waterfall, V-model, whatever you're doing, you can't count on sort of chance emails, hallway discussions, individual heroics, firefighter activities by individual contributors and managers. That's not going to work, because the people will not be able to notice that things are going wrong, because they'll be going wrong in different time zones, potentially, certainly out of eyesight, and often out of effective email and instant messaging range because of the time zones. So understand, outsourcing is always going to increase project complexity, and anytime complexity goes up, risk goes up, and we'll look at this a little bit more later. So anytime you're dealing with a more complex project, you need to think about planning, organization, tracking, managing the execution of the project. These things become more and more important. Accidental miracles are much less likely in an outsourced scenario. Okay, now, different organizations approach things in a different way. And you might be looking at this going, well, what does that have to do with Cadillac? Well, here's what that has to do with a Cadillac. It's a Johnny Cash song here, One Piece at a Time, which some of you might have heard at one point or another. It's worth a listen if you can find it. It's about a guy who, it's a minimum wage guy working on a Cadillac assembly line. And he really wants Cadillac, but he realizes the kind of money that he makes, he's just never going to get a Cadillac. And so